but we're each going to introduce ourselves. So I'm the moderator for this panel, freelancing for writers. I am a freelancer. I write. My fiction is historical fantasy. I have an MFA from Seton Hill University in writing popular fiction. My book is out on submission, my thesis novel. I've had some short stories published. But my freelancing mostly is for medical writing. I write, I edit, and I teach online in the allied health care fields. So that's me. And we'll go next to Travis. Ooh, I love this.
All right, Claire is also here. So it looks like we're all here now.
We're all here now.
Awesome. All right, so my name is Travis Heerman. I've been freelancing now for going on, well, more than 20 years, because I started in 1999. And that kind of goes in waves. I'm a full-time writer at this point, but I mix freelancing with fiction writing and ghost writing. I have freelanced in the gaming industry and also for business-to-business copywriting and ghostwriting. Those are my primary freelancing income streams.
And Claire.
Wonderful. And quick question, I just got an error message from the webinar. Is anyone getting a lot of background noise from me?
Oh.
Okay, wonderful. I guess it's just the computer. Yeah, well, I've been a freelance writer for about 5 years. I do a lot of ghost writing of technical and business books and things. I've also done some article writing and some short fiction publications. So.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a few questions that we worked out among us, and I will be looking at the Discord as well, trying to maybe see if we can tie some of the things that we thought about answering to some of the things that the attendees are interested in hearing. So we'll just start very basically. How did you get started freelancing?
Who'd you like to go first?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, unless you want me to pick people to go first.
I think it might help if we were voluntold.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, just for the sake of, so Claire and I just don't jump in.
Right. Okay, well, let's start with Travis.
Okay. I got started in my first, I don't know, 7 or 8 years worth of freelancing was all in the gaming industry or related. I got my start basically by getting to know the people who worked at the game company where I most wanted to work. And I did that through joining their demo team program and going to Gen Con and working in their booth. And through the course of getting to know them personally, I'm like, hey, I'm a writer. Do you guys need writers? And they're like, oh, well, here, so they threw me a bone, and I worked for them for a number of years after that. So, and over the course of that, I also sort of fell into writing articles for Scry magazine about collectible card games. And honestly, it's been so long ago, I don't remember how that started. I think I probably sent a query and said, yeah, sure, you can write something for us. And I don't know, I probably wrote 20 some articles for them. So that was the early days of my freelance career.
Okay. Go ahead, Claire.
Very nice. So I was very fortunate because I was working at a job in clinical research, and I took a step back one day and realized, you know what, half of what I'm doing is writing communications, translating between doctors and patients and pediatric patients. And I happened to know a woman who had left her corporate job to become a full-time freelance writer in her youth. So she was able to give me some really great tips about the pitfalls and the things that maybe you don't automatically assume you need to be doing. I've been primarily through the new freelance website Upwork. There's a lot of very good clients and a lot of very bad clients. So learning to navigate who's going to be a good investment for you and who's not is a whole skill set in itself. But I am a full-time freelance writer and editor now, and that's me.
What percentage of your working time on average is spent freelancing versus, in my position, versus what I would rather do, which would be writing fiction?
I guess right now the bulk, more or less all of the freelancing I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years has been ghostwriting, and it varies, but it's typically 1 to 2 work days per week, and then I spend the rest of the week working on my own stuff.
Very nice. I would love to someday get to that ratio. I do about 4 or 5 days a week of freelance client work now. Recently, I've been able to get that down to 4, and I'm taking 1 or 2 days a week to work on my own stuff.
Thanks. What do you consider the most important skill for a freelance writer to have besides knowledge of the subject and an ability to write? Or if those are your 2 choices, what's the most important expectation for a freelance writer to have about this sort of venture? Like, what kind of things should a writer know before really deciding to go into this field?
I think the biggest thing is resilience, because like Claire said, because the website you mentioned, Upwork, didn't that used to be called something else, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was called Elance.
Yeah.
And then there was another one, a competing website called Guru.com. So those were the 2 main online clearinghouses for freelance projects. And the multitude of frankly awful clients on there, potential clients, is just mind-boggling. People who will lowball you or complain about having to pay you at all, people who don't value your skills. You can very quickly start drowning in that stuff. So I guess a related skill to that would be how to vet potentially worthwhile clients. Because once you start looking at a ton of these listings, you can sort of start to see commonalities and read between the lines. Is like, nope, 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 nope. Oh, maybe, nope, nope, nope. So that's I haven't used those websites in a long time because, like I said, I've been ghostwriting, and that's a very different sort of thing. So anyway.
Yeah, I would second all of that. Client wrangling is definitely my #1 skill. That's something that they don't teach in any writing class I've ever been to, and they don't even teach in any school that I've ever been to. So there are a lot of things that I now recognize as red flags. This client is going to be difficult to work with or has unreasonable expectations, and a lot of things I've had to learn to do that I had never had to do before, in terms of establishing myself as an authority so that I would get more respect and the clients would take my opinion seriously. Because the worst thing is when a client has a strong opinion that's going to make the project worse and not get the outcome that they want. So then you do exactly what they tell you and it doesn't work. So learning to represent myself as an expert and establish that authority has really made things a lot easier as well.
There's something associated with this that I really want to bring up, because it was kind of a watershed moment for me. Because I think writers in general, especially we are sort of taught to not believe in ourselves. We are taught that by sort of overtly and subconsciously that our society does not value writers, particularly people who want to hire writers. They don't understand the skills involved. They don't understand how much practice it takes to get good at writing that looks effortless, right? So being a freelancer means that you have to take, there's a number of sort of incremental steps, I think, but there's this moment where you have to make the leap over the fence between amateur and professional. I am a professional now. I will not work for free. I will not, I will not have my work devalued. There's a really great snippet on YouTube. It's a clip from Harlan Ellison's autobiography movie, Dreams with Sharp Teeth. But the name of the clip is Pay the Writer. And it is sharp and profane, and it's a slap in the face to all the writers. And it's like a wake-up call for all the writers who are still dreaming of exposure. It's like, no, you cross my palm with silver. I don't care about exposure. I cannot eat exposure. That's and sort of that can come off sounding mercenary, but unless you adopt that, you will never make it as a freelancer.
And the thing is, the people who want folks to write for exposure, if you start asking them for money, they can always find someone else who's willing to write for exposure. So it's not a path to getting paid, really. The path to getting paid is to start demanding money.
Mm-hmm. You start off demanding money, and if they try to, and if there's any resistance at all, you walk away. That's it. Boom, I'm gone. See you. Good luck with somebody else. They will find somebody else.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
yeah, they will. No, something that came up in an Illustrator panel earlier today is it's also say no to clients who say you will get paid when we start earning money, because 90% of them don't. And whether they realize that or not is just not a good idea. Charge up front. That's what professionals do. That's what a professional writer does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my sort of standard practice is if it's a new client, I will ask for half of the project up front. Depending, if it's a whole novel, maybe not half. I might be willing to go thirds, right? Half, like a third at start, a third when we get to the halfway point, and a third when we get to the end. So you can, but you always get money up front, so that if the client flakes on you, it hasn't been a total loss for you. And it will happen. It will happen.
Oh yeah.
Now that being said, you can find some really great clients. I mean, I met, I started working for a woman who had her own sort of copywriting clearinghouse business where she had a stable of writers, and we found each other on guru.com, and we've been working together, and we've been close friends ever since, which has been awesome. But that was one out of dozens and dozens and dozens of clients. So,
yeah.
A slight digression.
Claire, since you're younger than we are, and it's been several years since I've done anything, looked at Upwork or freelance or anything like that. Do you still find it now that you're doing this full time? A lot of people look at this Upwork and sites like that as a way in. Do you still find that it brings you value to still use them after you've established yourself?
I definitely do. Upwork is unfortunately the only one I can say this about of the services I've found that are out there right now. But it's kind of the brand name that people know to go to if they're like, our company has a significant budget for a book. Oh, this is where we find writers. So it's probably about a 50-50 mix for me now of repeat clients that are either referrals or just folks I know who are not coming through Upwork, and I constantly bring in new clients through Upwork because there are constantly new companies going there and saying, this is where we're going to find our writers. Now, the things to know, are if you meet a client through Upwork, you can only exchange money through Upwork for 2 years. And they do take a significant cut of the pay. It's 10% after the first $500, and they just upped it recently, which I'm not happy about, to 20% of the first 500. So that's a cost, but the size of the client pool has made it worth it for me still.
So what are some sort of red flags for that a potential client is not a good one to take on?
So my biggest one is if they say they want it to be a bestseller, because that suggests to me that they don't understand that most of what determines sales, if they're writing a book or an ebook or whatever, is marketing. So I always tell them, you know, if I even talk to a client that says that, just so you know, this is going to be more on your marketing side and your cover design and all of that than it is on the actual content. A good book will sell better than a bad book, but a writer can't solely determine how it sells. Another one is just ads that say a lot of things about the personality of the writer. Like, you've got to be, you know, super motivated and a rock star and all these things, because what that means is they're going to constantly be testing you on that and possibly using praise instead of money to pay you. Those are two big ones I've found.
One of the things that I used to see all the time, and maybe this has changed, so correct me, you know, if this era has passed, Claire, but one of the things I used to see is all kinds of ads, people looking for writers willing to write some sort of, you know, slap together 200 or 300 word search engine optimized article, and you're supposed to write these articles for $1.50 a piece. And what they're doing is they're exploiting because it's not just, Americans in Upwork. You have other English-speaking countries where someone in Indonesia or India would be quite happy to spend an hour and make $1.25, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you start to see the sort of patterns of exploitation there, and you avoid them like the plague. So there's that. Yeah, anybody that wants to pay you on the back end is an instant non-starter. Unless I know you personally, I'm not going to invest hours, weeks, months of my time on your project without money in my pocket.
One thing.
Go ahead.
One thing I do appreciate about Upwork is they have something called an escrow function where the client gives the money to Upwork and Upwork holds on to it. Then if you disappear, the client gets refunded. If the client disappears and you can prove that you did the work, you get the money. I never start working without money in escrow. And sometimes the clients feel more comfortable because they're like, okay, so you're not going to take our money and run because it doesn't get released to you yet. But if they disappear or turn out not to be able to pay, you know, they can't if there's money in escrow.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good thing about really certain companies. Yeah. About working for a company. I do freelance editing through a company called Scribendi. And I don't have to solicit clients. There's a list of jobs on the board. I pick which ones I want, and the amount I'm going to get paid is right there. And I get paid as long as my quality is good. And it's not like sometimes you'll run across boards that say, oh, we pay you as long as your quality is good, but your quality can never be good enough. This isn't one of those. So, but that's always nice to find a board or a site that will take care of that soliciting and getting payment from the clients for you. Usually you get paid less because of that, but especially if you're just starting, it's a good way to build up your skills.
Yeah,
there's a discussion on Discord going on right now about Fiverr, and Fiverr's not great.
I've never had any success with Fiverr, quite frankly.
I am not familiar with Fiverr at all.
most things can be done for $5.
Oh yeah, no way.
Yeah.
There's nothing I'm willing to spend time on as a writer that I can do for $5.
Same here.
Maybe
And
write a haiku.
I
I'll write a haiku for $5.
It's not to say that Fiverr only. I mean, it's not like it has to be $5, but usually it's pretty darn cheap.
Yeah, the appeal is that you can find people to do something for $5. Some people do run like decently priced businesses on there. I just haven't had any success attracting that, possibly because of the whole you can get this done for $5 marketing device.
This is a whole other sort of panel, I think, about about valuing ourselves as writers, and a lot, and it's sort of related to the sort of professional amateur line, right? You have to, and even if you're just writing fiction on spec and you're sending it out to get published, you have to respect your own work, right? You send it out to people who, that's sort of the rule that says money flows to the writer, it never flows the other direction.
Yeah.
So that rule covers a whole lot of bases, both in sort of publishing and freelancing, and a lot of that has to do with you have to respect your own work. You're going to send it to fantasy and science fiction magazine first. You're not going to send it to an anthology that pays you in royalties. It will sell 5 copies probably total. So anyway.
So
the
here's
good news
a related question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Claire.
I was just gonna say the good news is working with clients has actually boosted my confidence, because I see the copy that they send me that they want turned in professional prose, and I'm like, wow, I am better at this than a lot of people.
Well, here's a question related to this. This is one that you suggested, Claire. How do you establish your expertise and authority in the client's mind during the initial interview? How do you get across to them that you're better at this than they are?
Probably with samples. Now, I will caveat a lot of the stuff I've been saying with, you might have to lowball the first couple of projects just so you can get them and have something to show the next person, right? You might do a good job on all of it, but then sort of treat those first couple of cheap projects as both learning experience and also as something that you can then put in a portfolio and show the next person, and that's how, and you build it that way, right?
And something that I learned. Oh,
go ahead.
Just something that I learned the hard way was it's a good idea to hang on to copies for your portfolio of your work before the client gets to it, because sometimes they will request changes that do not necessarily help the quality of the work. So. And another. Oh.
That's happened to me.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of what that question is asking is, how do you behave like a professional? And that could be a whole course, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like if you comport yourself as a professional, I think that first starts with believing it, right? And if you don't believe it deep down, they're gonna pick up on that. So that's why I say a lot of this is about your where you are mentally, where you are with your beliefs about your skill set and your expertise, right? And that's the best starting point.
One thing that I've found that's a concrete thing that's easy to do, but it wouldn't necessarily have occurred to me if I hadn't been advised to do it, is asking them questions about, who's the target audience for your project? What do you want them to do after they read this piece? Are there similar works you can refer me to? That kind of establishes the idea that there are specific things they need to do to be successful, and you know what those are.
Mhm. I think a lot of it has to do with the kind of freelancing that you're doing. A book that sort of changed that shifted my strategies when I was trying to do freelancing more seriously was a book by Bob Bly, and he was this sort of legendary copywriter.
I love Bob Bly.
Yeah, and it's been a while. I'm sure he's still around. He might be retired.
He is. He's on my Facebook.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you can look up his books on how to be a freelancer, and you cannot go wrong.
I literally got into freelancing because of his.
So a lot of it is like, what industry are you going into? If you're working on like marketing copy, that's a very different set of skills than ghostwriting. So you kind of have to know your business, and like the questions that are expected for if you're going to learn how to be a marketer, which is what you'd be doing. You need to learn how to be a marketer and the right questions to ask so that you can be an effective marketer. And if you ask the right questions, the client will pick up on that, and that will reflect well on you.
Or they will be clueless and realize that you know more about it than them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing is you have to, I mean, do some thought about what you want to do in freelancing. I mean, do you have another job? You know, there's not a lot of fiction freelancing, except for, I mean, I'm doing some fiction ghostwriting as well. So there's some, but you gotta get there. So there's, you know, I always say there's it's inversely proportional how much you're going to get paid to how interesting the work is. So the best things, the things that pay me the best are in medicine. Am I interested in? No, I was a history, German, Greek major. I write historical fantasy. That's what I like. But I happen to be good at writing in medical stuff, so people pay me for it. But if you have any credentials in any field, use them. So that creates your authority. If your credentials are in writing, then that's your authority. But if you have also credentials in some other field, HR, stuff like that, people need stuff written for them in every field. So market your specialty, even if you don't think it's that fascinating.
One of the things we haven't touched on is sort of is writing for magazines, which is a whole other skill set because you have to query, you have to brainstorm ideas and pitch and all of that. That's a completely different set of skills than a lot of what we've been talking about.
Trade magazines pay quite well. A lot of trade magazines pay quite well.
Yeah, like if you can write for sort of like one of the airline magazines, that's sort of the, I don't know, the brass ring of that sort of writing for the trade publications. And that's another whole thing. Consumers aren't aware that there's another whole industry of magazines for spas and fences, and all these industries have their trade publication or two, and they all need writers, and generally those do pay pretty well. It's boring as hell, but
I got 3 of these. These are all magazines. Somebody asked, do you know if there would be any issue for a Canadian or someone from a different country to take on a US-based client? Oh, no. There's so many.
I think so. As long as your English is good, you can write for anybody. They may not even necessarily know. They probably would, I guess, but.
Yeah, every now and then there are tax applications or something like the value-added tax, but from what I understand, they're pretty minor. So.
You got to watch your spelling.
Yes. I teach.
And vice versa. If I want to work for a Canadian client, I have to spell color differently. So.
Right. And I know when I work for Scribendi, we take work from all around the world. The company is based in Canada, so one of the things that they changed it this year, but until this year, they didn't give you a 1099 at the end of the year, so there was some tax stuff there, but I think they were forced to. But when we take on a job, it has to say which English they want you to edit in. So British, Australian, Canadian, or US. So
Yeah.
you have to learn that. You do have to learn those differences if you're working in a country different than where you live.
Yeah, and if you've never gotten freelance income or income outside of an employer, you do have to pay your own income taxes on that. So I use QuickBooks myself. I don't know if anyone else has a recommendation for that.
I used to. I used to use QuickBooks, but I've since gotten lazy and just figured out how to do it in less complicated ways. And part of that it was part of that involved just simplifying the stuff that I was working on. When I was working with a whole bunch of different clients over the course of a year, then yeah, QuickBooks really makes sense. But right now with the ghostwriting thing, I've been working with one client now for 3 or 4 years, and he is the one who bird dogs the projects and distributes them, which is awesome for me because I hate marketing. So and that keeps it pretty simple. But yeah, taxes is a whole other aspect of this.
It's not that difficult with tax software
It's
now.
not that hard.
It's really not. I always say, I have so many people who, everybody in my family, I do their taxes. I have so many friends who pay people to do their taxes. Sorry if there's any tax accountants out there, but I'm like, oh my gosh, you're paying $400 for somebody to do your taxes. Like, if you've gotten your stuff ready to go to the tax preparer, you've done all the hard part already. Like, it's really not that difficult.
Yeah.
Even if you're not incorporated, if you are incorporated, it's a little different, but it walks you right. All the software walks you right through it. It's really not difficult.
For me, it's just a matter of remembering that I have to take a portion out of all the payments I get for taxes, so that I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting paid this much, but I'm actually going to have this much left.
Yeah.
Do
So
you then
make a significant income.
take that aside? Do you take that portion and put it aside and pay your quarterly taxes?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. One of the best things about being a freelancer and a professional writer in general is all of the stuff that you get to write off on your income tax, because it is related to what you're doing. Your home office, any conventions that you go to, writers conferences, all of that stuff is tax deductible. So that's nice. It helps. It makes this easier, you know.
You do have to show a net profit for, I believe it's 3 of your first 5 years to have it be counted as business expenses, but I did a lot of deductions for writers conferences my first couple years. So.
I actually have, my husband is a surgeon and he's employed. So I actually just upped the amount that they take out of his paycheck in taxes, and it covers what taxes I have to have come out. So it all works out. Stop freelancing because too many clients. Do you recommend a freelancer contract with a collection agency? Ooh, I stopped freelancing because too many clients wouldn't finish paying their bills.
That, to be honest, is one of the big reasons that I still primarily find new clients through Upwork, because if you put it in escrow, Upwork will get you the money, and if you refuse to start working until it's in escrow, they can't do that.
Yeah,
I do like that aspect of writing for strict vending, and the people that I teach for Ed2Go, and I don't have to collect anything from students. I just get paid. So I do like that too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I was going to say that until they finish paying you, your work does not belong to them. So they are not free to use it until if you have a written contract, it should say in the contract that they are not free to use your work until you have been paid in full. Now, legally, realistically, legally you have a fairly firm footing, but realistically, unless you're willing to really push, you may not get very far. I've had to threaten collection a few times, and most of the time that works. And then they say, "Okay, fine," and then they take off, and then you never see them again. So.
Oh, I want to give a shout out to a really great resource, Lawyers for the Creative Arts. If you are a creative professional and you make, I think there's an income cutoff, it's like $36,000 a year or something. If you make less than that, they will take a $50 processing fee and set you up with a lawyer who will help with contracts, disputes, whatever, pro bono.
Oh,
If you're in the US legal system, that's where they operate.
Awesome.
that's very nice.
I'm going to put that link in the chat because they're really important.
The other thing is, there's a lot of questions on, or a lot of people ask, how do you find work? I actually have so many people come to me with, how do you start being a freelancer? But I have a document that I had put together with links and things on. If anybody wants to email me, I will be happy to send it over to you. The other thing I wanted to point out today, so funny, this week I got the Writer's Digest. It has 101 best websites issue, which they do every year. Apparently they said for 22 years now they've been doing it. And there are there are great websites in there, of course. There's only like 3 listed under freelancing, but there are other categories that really are freelancing, good for freelancing. So if you can get your hands on that, this month's Writer's Digest, there are a lot of really good links in there. Can one train a cat to do taxes? I don't think so.
Another thing I want to note, I see someone saying, how do you find jobs on Upwork that are worth the time to bid? They do have a filter function now, so you can filter by the client's budget or the experience level they require.
The other thing that I always promised myself when I first started out freelancing, with all of the sites there are a million sites out there if you just do Google search for freelancing. Some are free, some are paid. And so of the sites that have a free and a paid option, I always would join as the free. And then if I got enough work that would pay for the membership, that would be the first thing that I would do. But if I never got any work and never got anything from the free part of it, then I didn't join the paid part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I just posted that Harlan Ellison video I referenced in the Discord chat. So.
Oh, I'm excited.
Okay, what's the worst thing anybody ever asked you to write? Start with Claire. She just looked like she had an idea.
Yeah, I've had some really interesting, like you wouldn't think there'd be a seedy underbelly of the writing industry, but there totally is. I had to report a client to the National Science Foundation once because I come from clinical research, and so I know what certain terms mean. And they were claiming to use good manufacturing practices, which is actually really hard to do. It's so hard to do. We could at one point not find a US-based supplement maker that followed them, so we had to get our supplements from overseas for a clinical trial. Anyway, they were claiming to use that, and I was like, they're either doing way more than they need to or they're lying. And it did turn out that they were lying, and they got a very sternly worded letter from the National Science Foundation. I also unfortunately had to fire a client once because they were asking for historical fiction, and in the edits they were putting in subtext that was really kind of racist, and I'm like, I can't do this. But Travis.
Yeah, I don't remember, like the clients that I've fired. One was a therapist who was writing these stream of consciousness sort of self-help books, and I don't know, I did two where he would just sort of write them, and it would be just like sentence, white space, sentence, white space, just like 100 pages worth of affirmations and sort of stream of consciousness affirmations. And after doing a couple of those for him, I got to the third one, and it's like he kind of went crazy and went off the rails. Where like we got in the middle of, you know, that moment where you scratch a needle across a record, like in the middle of like the third book, I hit that and went, wait a minute, and I started like posting comments in the Word documents, like, really, is this what you mean? Like, so I started questioning what he was saying, and he fired me. Well, I should say we fired each other pretty much simultaneously. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Oh yeah, I see someone
that's what it comes to
mentioning
mind.
doing homework. I got a phone call once. This is super shady. I got a phone call because they didn't want to leave a paper trail for one of those services that ghost writes high school and college assignments for rich kids. And yeah, that did not fly, but unfortunately it is a pretty lucrative field.
It is, and that you can tell because of or that either suck you into it, or because they word it in such a way that you don't know until you're talking to someone and you're like,
I used to teach college, well, I still do. I used to teach composition, freshman composition, and or teach English composition at various levels of undergrad. And what those kids don't know, but every single instructor does, is that they can always tell every single time.
That makes me feel better.
Because the kids who do that are the ones that are struggling, and they're struggling because they're terrible writers and they don't want to learn. And that is, if the teacher is any good at all, they will have known this very early on, so that when they get to their midterm or final paper or whatever it is, and they go, wow, this is really good, this is totally not this kid. So I've twice I've kicked students out of my class for buying essays.
wow.
It's like, it cost that kid 14, because I went and found the essay. It cost him $14.95 to fail out of my course.
Well, good call.
Somebody's asking about a website. One, do you have websites that
Yes.
for your freelancing business specifically?
Not for my free. I used to. I don't anymore. The only website I've got is for all of my author stuff. And I had a freelancing one for a while. I just sort of stopped, and I wasn't enjoying the kind of freelancing that I was doing, so I just sort of let it fall by the wayside. So
how about you, Claire?
I actually use, if I'm sending someone like this is an information about me page, I actually use my Upwork profile because it's a bunch of third-party verified reviews that you can't tamper with as the freelancer. I've been experimenting with Squarespace recently, but that is something I haven't prioritized for a while. So.
Okay. So you don't have any? Do you have a website building option that you recommend? Is that a website?
Yeah, I've had good experiences with Squarespace, and if it's super, super simple, my science fiction author website is actually still WordPress, but that's because it's so simple that it doesn't need a fancy design.
Mine's WordPress. My husband does it. How about you, Travis? You have a website. Do you know how it's built?
I know there are different resources out there. I know like Wix is one that people have used, WordPress sites.
Yeah.
I've always put together my own. I'm kind of I used to be an engineer, so I know how to code mostly. So I'm not a terribly good designer, but it's always easy to find templates that I can then play with. So the websites that I have now for my 2 author names are I built with Adobe Muse, which works pretty slick. I used to use Dreamweaver, but Dreamweaver is abysmally awful now. But
Oh, there's another.
that's how
There's another.
I've got a WordPress blog attached to my author website. So
There's another attendee who's apparently an expert on this. He's helping that person out. That's good.
Yeah.
Networking, very important for freelancing. Find people who do what you do. We have 5 minutes or 3 minutes left. So if you haven't, do you have any sort of advice that you would give to somebody who really just wants to jump into this field?
well, you just brought up you hang out with people who do what you do. I mean,
Mhm.
hanging out with writers is part of that, but all of my early freelance work and all of the new clients that I got in the gaming industry came because it was a personal connection. Because I went to Gen Con and I got to know these people. And through that sort of network and people I met, all of that work came to me because we were sitting down to have coffee at Gen Con and said, oh, I'm working on this. Oh, do you need any writers? And that's how it works, at least in that area.
Yeah, and if you can find any more experienced specifically at freelancing because of the client wrangling and all of that, more experienced freelance writers as mentors are really, really helpful because there's just so much about really running a business that they don't teach anywhere in writing curricula, that it's good to get advice as opposed to learning through trial and error, which I have done with a few things.
Everybody does to a point, I think. But definitely, you know, if you know people who do it, ask them questions. You have, if these people are willing to give you their email and say, ask me anything, anytime, that is a gold mine. So, yeah, we have contact information on here. I'm going to send you, anybody who wants it, the information that I have. Let's see. So I think there's one more quick story. What do you love about freelancing? Or do you used to love freelancing?
I love the freedom. One of the and one of the things that's great about it is all of my ghostwriting projects, all of my freelance projects are things where I learned something. I learned about spas, and I learned about mountain climbing, and I learned about art theft because I wrote a novel for a guy, art heists. Did you know that 90% of fine art heists worldwide are fraud? It's because it's the owner trying to collect on an insurance policy.
Wow.
90%. So anyway, stuff like that. I just love learning about whatever it is that I got to learn about to write for this client, right? That's that and the freedom of it.
Yeah, those have got to be my top 2 as well. Before this, I worked in emergency medicine clinical research, so I did not have a choice of hours, and the hours were very weird. So being able to make my own hours is huge for me. And so is the learning. The learning might be my number 1 thing because I write about all sorts of topics. I work with fascinating people. The best case iteration of the ghostwriting work that I do is, okay, you are a leading expert in the subject and you are paying me to have you tell me everything you know about it. It's great.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna have to agree with that. I love the freedom, and I love learning about anything I can learn about. Anytime I start to learn a lot about something, my husband's like, "You're not going to get a degree or a certificate in this, are you?" Well,
Jack of all trades, master of none. That's kind of a freelancer's creed, right?
Yes. So thank you guys for being here for the panel. You were extremely informative, and I really had a good time moderating it.
Yeah, thank you for moderating. You did a great job, and thank you to all of our attendees who've been hanging out with us for an hour.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah,
And
yeah, thank you.
I'll be hanging around out, in the Discord chat if anybody has a question.
Yeah, same. I'll be
Yeah.
sort of staying around on that for a little while if you guys have any questions.